Hello, how are you all? All right, we're just gonna get into it. We've got 25 minutes, right?
Let's do it, Anthony.
Most people think that Bitcoin miners are following where energy production is. You guys and others seem to actually be thinking about producing energy or going in building more energy infrastructure. Talk about that.
Our major long-term thesis is Bitcoin mining drives more generation. All generation types, whether it's some type of renewable generation or even baseload generation. The major inefficiency that we have as not just the United States, but the globe, is so much energy is wasted because energy is not only produced when it's consumed. It's just produced when the inputs are driving it. So I think, in the early days, Bitcoin miners, and still to today, of course, are going after where they find excess energy. Our long-term thesis is that Bitcoin mining will be driving new generation. And in the very long term, Bitcoin mining and generation and power assets will all be the same thing because it solves such a critical problem. Off-taking energy when no one else will take it. That's what drives high prices. You see volatility in energy markets. It's not, at the end of the day, it's not the generator or the utility that's paying those prices. The consumers pay for that volatility in the form of higher rates. So I think we're starting to see a lot of interesting things with Bitcoin miners. And I know you talk a lot about Bitcoin miners, and you see this as well. Pairing with generation, finding surplus energy in different places, and over the long term, I think we're going to see some pretty exciting things about Bitcoin mining solving that problem.
Let's talk a little bit more about energy. Trump obviously ran on a platform of deregulation, energy being a big area where he thinks that he can apply that. What are the things that you all are looking forward to him potentially doing? And then are there certain things that Trump coming into office may actually be friction points on the energy side?
Well, tying in the last point there is, I think the new administration will help drive more generation development in the United States. I think there's been unnecessary hurdles in the past, and that has held us back from having greater energy abundance. And that's critical as a society, especially with not just what we're seeing with the demands of power through Bitcoin mining, but all the AI, HPC data centers that need more and more power to make these applications. The United States has not produced enough power. It has not built enough infrastructure to handle this newfound demand. So I'm really excited about a new administration that is driving more generation development and not unfairly or unnecessarily picking winners and losers. I think we've been very encouraged with the commentary that we've seen out of the Trump campaign. Trump on Truth Social posted he wants the United States to be the leader in Bitcoin and crypto. He wants the United States to be the leader in Bitcoin mining. And there is no better place to do that than here in Texas.
Speaking of Texas, I think it's the former president of ERCOT came out and said that Bitcoin miners are incredibly important for stabilizing the grid. You guys have the ability to kind of take power and stop taking the power. What are some of the things that maybe have developed over the last 12 months or so that people should know?
Yeah, first, rest in peace to Brad Jones. He was an incredible pioneer in the space, a energy legend for so many decades, and really immediately saw the benefit of Bitcoin mining for the energy grid. When he was the president of ERCOT, he came out to our facility in Rockdale, and I was just so happy and impressed. He just looked around and he's like, this is what we need. He's like, this is solving a problem for us here in ERCOT. What you guys are doing is fantastic. So I think what we're seeing is a much closer collaboration now with industry participants, Bitcoin miners, with both utility companies and ERCOT itself. I think ERCOT understands, they've put out material certainly to the effect, understanding how Bitcoin mining solves key problems here in Texas. Texas is an energy abundant state. Energy is very cheaply priced for most hours of the year. And it's those few percent of hours that get headlines and get criticism around stability of the grid. So what we're really trying to fix there is those few percent hours. And Bitcoin mining is a tool that will buy up that surplus energy, those 90% plus hours of the year when it's in abundance. Solar is producing and wind is producing whether or not anyone has demand for power, so they need people to take that power. It's driven quite low prices this year, and I think with gas remaining low, we're going to continue to see that in coming years as well. So Bitcoin miners are shutting off during this peak period of time, and what we're also seeing is Bitcoin miners participating in ancillary services more. And the reason that is important, and for those who don't know, ancillary services are programs where ERCOT effectively has control over your load. Every day you can bid into ERCOT, I have this load for this price in these hours, you can control what we want to do. And so a lot of people think that means they just will turn you off. Well, I mean, their job is much more complicated than that. They need demand at different times as well, even if the market prices are high. So you give ERCOT the ability to keep you on or off at their exact discretion, and you have to respond. There's no, you have to be running. There's a very steep penalty if you're not running. And I think what we're seeing is more and more Bitcoin miners participating in these programs, giving grid operators like ERCOT more tools. And because there's more participation in these programs, it's driving the price of them down. The consumers at ERCOT do ultimately pay for ancillary services. Bitcoin miners bid in lower than what a lot of the competing services are, and we drive not only a bigger market, but a better market for consumers here in Texas. So the industry has evolved so much. Even in the past 2 years, we've seen more and more how Bitcoin miners are working with grid operators, working with utilities. And I think the result of that is because of the model set here in Texas with ERCOT, other markets are starting to see the value. The TVA, I think, is very bullish. We've recently started an operations, acquired a company in Kentucky. We're building out operations there. They're supportive there. So the message is spreading, and I love to see it.
There has been, speaking of Kentucky, some talk about taxes being used as an incentive. If you mine Bitcoin in Kentucky, maybe you're treated differently, or if you use Kentucky energy, I think is another thing that's been talked about. You all obviously look at lots of jurisdictions, both domestically and internationally. How do you think about these tax programs that different states are kind of thinking about or implementing?
At the end of the day, our core objective is to mine Bitcoin at a discount to what its market price is. So we want to have the lowest hash cost, the lowest direct cost per Bitcoin, and then we want to leverage that advantage up over the widest scale that we can. So anything that helps drive that cost down is important. Of course, power is the primary cost. So we're looking where we can get the cheap power. But where there are further tax incentives like that, where you have business-friendly environments, all of that, when you have a large employee base, all of those things help drive down that cost per mine. So whatever the economic incentives there are, we're going to be responding to them. And the fact that that even exists, you've been around Bitcoin for a long time. Can you ever imagine 10 years ago that there are states that are incentivizing Bitcoin miners to come? It's crazy how far we've come.
Well, I think that states are incentivizing miners to come. It seems like states are fighting over the Bitcoiners to come there. Now countries are starting to do it. My favorite over the last couple of years was the mayors of different cities competing over who's going to take more of their salary in Bitcoin, right? I think we've kind of arrived, fellas,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Speaking of money, you all have to fund kind of future development and growth. Mm-hmm. Historically, I think that a lot of miners mined Bitcoin and actually sold it because they needed the money to be able to fund operations. It seems like miners generally have decided we should actually hold on to the Bitcoin. This is going to be valuable in the future. You all, I think, are probably the second largest miner or so in terms of Bitcoin on your balance sheet. But there's equity and debt markets. So just talk about how you guys think about funding future growth, and as an industry, what are some of the things that are working that people who are investing in the public markets maybe can think about for these businesses moving forward?
So Riot specifically, first on the Bitcoin treasury strategy. At different times, we've held on to all the Bitcoin that we mined. Certain points we've switched to a mixed strategy, and certain points we've sold all the Bitcoin that we've mined on a monthly basis. This year, when the halving was approaching and we saw the ETFs rolling out, we became even more bullish on Bitcoin than we already were. So for most of this year, we've been retaining all of the Bitcoin that we mine. And to us, that's part of the value proposition. It's the leverage that you can effectively achieve as a Bitcoin miner. For the third quarter, our direct cost per Bitcoin was $35,700 per coin. So if I can mine something for $35,700 per coin, that's worth, the average price over the third quarter was something like $62,000. But not only am I getting leverage there, but the continual upside from Bitcoin because of how it is compounding, over years, and what that compound annual growth rate is or has been historically and seems to be continuing. We want a piece of that. We're a Bitcoin company at the end of the day, but it costs money to do this. We still have to pay the power bills. We have to pay salaries. We have to fund growth because we're trying to leverage that low cost of production over a wider scale. Historically, Bitcoin miners and still today have really had to focus on using equity to fund their business. The debt markets have not been open to Bitcoin miners in a huge way. Convertible debt markets are quite open right now, but you're not getting project financing like you would if you were building some type of power asset or a normal data center. Those products have not been open for Bitcoin miners.
Why not?
The industry is not, I don't think it's trusted enough by these institutions. Lenders do not have enough of a long-term belief in Bitcoin mining. They see it as volatile. The industry hasn't performed perfectly over years. So, there's success stories and there's sadder stories as well. So it's difficult to get financing behind that. But what we are seeing are more products, at least that have different types of collateral around them. I think Bitcoin-backed loans are starting to become more attractive. The terms are less onerous than they have been in the past. So we have over 11,000 Bitcoin now. So we have a strong asset base. So thanks to the price going up, it's worth over $1 billion. We have a strong asset base that we can borrow against. I also think there is going to be opportunities to borrow against infrastructure in the future. Maybe not necessarily Bitcoin mining specific assets, but power assets are valuable and they have use beyond just Bitcoin mining. And I think those are assets that have the potential to be collateralized and we can use that to fund our business. We're all still growing. Bitcoin mining has changed. The landscape has professionalized even in the past 2 years. It has changed so much. And that's what we need to demonstrate to institutions. And I think as the industry matures, that we're going to be able to have better financing mechanisms around it because we don't want to rely on equity forever.
I was telling you earlier that I think not only are the companies better, they've become more efficient, they're learning from each other. Somebody figures something out, it gets replicated across these different businesses. But even the CEOs and the executive teams can talk about their company, much more clearly because I think they've had time to kind of figure it out as well, which obviously serves well in the future. But it does feel like there's a fork in the road. Some companies are staying as Bitcoin miners, others are moving more to kind of this high performance compute where they say, hey, look, we're going to do Bitcoin mining, we might do some AI data center stuff, maybe there's other use cases. How have you guys evaluated kind of that fork in the road and describe kind of the strategy that you're taking?
So I would say the foundation to our strategy as a company has been to create optionality with having power assets. So developing sites that have interconnections to power at large scale. That optionality, obviously, as our core business, we have typically used for Bitcoin mining. We've only used for Bitcoin mining, I should say. But as you noted, there's demand for power from HPC AI data centers as well. So what we're starting to see is Bitcoin miners that are dabbling in that. Core Scientific signed a huge deal with CoreWeave earlier this year, and that has got a lot of investor interest around doing this. So we are open to monetizing that power for whatever is going to create the most value. And I do think there's a way that having an AI HPC strategy helps contribute and support the Bitcoin mining side of the business to what we were just talking about financing. If I had an AI HPC hosting segment or however it looked like, and we're getting predictable cash flow that the market would value because of its predictability over long term, and we can use that cash flow to fund operations or fund growth, that's amazing. I think the industry is in a wait-and-see approach right now to see if anyone else is going to be able to sign a good deal. Lots of miners are looking at it. We have been in discussions, and it's still early. I don't know what will happen, but we're open to doing things like this in order to maximize the value of the capacity that we have.
When you think about Bitcoin mining kind of moving forward, hardware obviously is something that changes from time to time. There was a point in 2017, I think, where everyone was scrambling and trying to buy Bitmain S9s.
Yeah.
There has now been rapid innovation, things like liquid cooling, et cetera, that have really kind of taken the industry by storm. What are the things that you all either are planning for over the next couple of years or things that you're really excited about?
What we're really excited about, first, most recently, Riot has been purchasing from MicroBT, and they have a US-based manufacturing facility. So miners that we are buying for our new facility here in Texas, they are produced in Pennsylvania, and instead of being put on a expensive plane, they're put on a truck and they're trucked here to Texas. So it really is, to us, supports the Bitcoin mining in America story. We're seeing a lot more competition in the hardware space. As you said, there's different types of products being rolled out. Here in Texas, at least at our Corsicana facility, we've built that with 100% immersion. And what's been cool about that is we've been using MicroBT's model that is designed specifically for immersion. What I'm excited about is, with the industry maturing and these products becoming more predictable, we can build infrastructure that we can upgrade future generations of miners into without having to change all the infrastructure. So with like the immersion tanks that we're building out now, they're specifically designed for this model. And I think we have greater assurance now, the way these offerings are evolving, that if a new model comes out, it's the same size, it's very likely to be the same size, the same power requirements, and we can put that in there. So that allows us to be a lot more longer term thinking with our infrastructure and give a longer useful life to that infrastructure. And then then it's just a matter of upgrading miners when it's time, hopefully many years down the road.
Let's talk about scale. There's a number of different miners that I've spoken to, and it used to be, hey, we're looking for 10 megawatts. Now it seems like 100 megawatts is kind of the floor. I'm assuming at some point it's only going to continue to go up bigger and bigger. And so how has that changed kind of the business, the financing? Is just this pursuit of bigger and bigger scale and kind of these almost like gigantic single sites, rather than having 50 sites around the country that maybe are smaller?
I think there are pros and cons to both of those strategies. I don't think one is necessarily right and one is necessarily wrong. Riot, we have followed mainly the mega site model. We have a large site in Rockdale, Texas that has 700 megawatts of capacity built out, and we are building a site in Corsicana, Texas, or Navarro County, near Corsicana, that is going to have it has 1 gigawatt of capacity. We built the first 400 megawatts out. What do we get there? Well, we get the benefits of the economies of scale. So we can have all of these supporting functions around an operations team, and it's all on one site. We have our own cranes, all this equipment to rapidly fix any issues that they have occur. If we were spread out all over, it would not be as easy you would not achieve the economies of scale, I don't believe, and moving resources around becomes slower in a game where time is very important. And there's a lot of urgency of getting hash rate up and running, and if it goes down, getting it back up again. The flip side of that is, we're very concentrated. If there's any place to be concentrated, I think it's Texas. I think the energy market here is fantastic, and I think it is a very business and Bitcoin-friendly environment. If you're spread out all over the country, though, you have your risks spread out all over the place. So one site going down, there are things that happen all the time. If everything could be perfect, and then the utility has some issue, or there's some extreme weather event or something. If you're spread out all over the country, you don't have that same risk profile, because just one site is not as big of a difference. So I think we're starting to do a little bit more of that with the Kentucky operations that we're building out. We have 3 sites there, and we're continuing to look around the country for Bitcoin-friendly jurisdictions, good power markets where we can continue to build out and act on our vision here.
When you go into these sites, there's a pretty big economic impact on the local community. Mm-hmm. You're mentioning places that are not Dallas or Austin or major metros. Talk a little bit as to what you guys have seen there, in terms of job creation or other economic impact.
It's really a rewarding part of what we do, because what we're doing is we're finding where surplus power capacity exists. Different points of the grid where there's more transmission than there is demand. This is going to be in more remote locations, more rural communities typically. And major industries won't always really be out there. Bitcoin mining, being location agnostic, will go to those areas. So what ends up happening, in our new facility, for example, in Navarro County near Corsicana, Texas, that becomes a focal point of that community. We're employing hundreds of people. I was just at the site this morning. There's hundreds of employees out at the site, and then we have third-party contractors, and there's hundreds more of those. We're buying locally. We're a part of the community. We're part of the school. We're involved in a very big way. and it really does create opportunities where there may not have been so many otherwise. And what I personally like as well, one of the things that we do at Riot is make sure that every employee is a shareholder. Every employee participates in our equity incentive plan and our long-term incentive plan. So in all of these communities now, some people for the first time have brokerage accounts that are set up, and they're shareholders of Riot, so they benefit from the success of Riot, and as a result, the success from Bitcoin. So it's pretty awesome. If we were near a major city, it would be great to have all those resources too, but to make that impact where industry wouldn't otherwise be there, or in the case of our Rockdale facility had left, it's very rewarding. It's awesome to see.
One of the things people may not appreciate is that there's no real remote work when it comes to a mining facility.
You cannot remote work, construction. You cannot remote work electrical engineering.
So on one hand, you have a little bit simpler time than other business owners.
Now you've recently got involved in Bitcoin mining yourself. How did that come about? You're now with HUD 8.
Look, I think that this is true of most of the miners. There's a disconnect between building a really good business and telling people what you're doing. And Bitcoin miners have it a little bit easier because you're just mining Bitcoin, right? But when you get into the HPC stuff, I think that now you basically have to tell people you are providing energy and you're an energy infrastructure provider. And in HUD 8's specific case, they want to provide that energy not to old world economy, but to new world stuff. So obviously Bitcoin, artificial intelligence, data centers, and other things. And so it's a very different story to talk about being an energy, I joked, I called it an energy dealer.
Yeah, when I first saw that, I was like, wait, what is he doing here?
Yeah, an energy dealer is, there's like drug dealers and energy dealers. No, but an energy dealer is basically what you're doing, right? Is you have the energy infrastructure and you're looking who's going to be the person that's going to pay me the most for it.
Right.
And that's a very different type of, vernacular and communication around a business than we are mining Bitcoin. They're similar, but it's a very different strategy. And so really, I think of it almost as like the end result. What percentage of your business is Bitcoin mining? I don't want to speak for HUD and kind of what their ultimate goal is, but I think that a Bitcoin miner who says, hey, we only do Bitcoin mining, it's 100%. These people who are now saying, well, look, if we're going to be energy kind of infrastructure providers, maybe it's 50-50. Maybe it actually is some other percentage. And then I think what's really interesting is like we don't even know what all the use cases yet are for that energy. And so I think there's a lot to kind of figure out there. So I'm excited about it. I think speaking of energy, there is always these ideas that kind of go viral online that are hilarious to me because they sound contrarian, but they're actually consensus.
Okay.
One of them is nuclear. Everyone now is like, yes, we should do this. And it seems like every day somebody has a grand idea of like, I'm going to say the contrarian thing, and then everyone else in there is like, I agree. Why do we not have this yet?
More nuclear energy?
Yeah. And for Bitcoin mining specifically.
Well, I think I just think more broader as part of the energy mix, nuclear has just unnecessarily been held back. I think there has just been so much negative emotions about it that have stuck with people from things that happened many decades ago. The fact is, the process is a lot more safe now. It is an abundant source of energy. It is effectively a renewable source of energy. It is a key way of reaching our energy goals. No, I'm not an expert in constructing nuclear facilities. My understanding is they take a lot of time, but my understanding is also the permitting and approval around it is even longer. I'm not sure how many new nuclear plants have been approved in the past 3 decades. Very few, potentially zero, I don't know. And unfortunately, around the globe, particularly in China, they have not slowed down in that area. So they are benefiting from continued generation sources, including nuclear being built out, and then we've built back. I think it takes a new generation of people that don't have the stigma from 3 Mile Island or anything like that to now be pushing forward to do what's needed to reach energy goals. People have been talking about small modular reactors now. I think that's very cool. If we get that working on a large scale, that really does a lot for solving energy problems. So I'm all for it. I don't know anything about nuclear power except that I like it, but I hope to see more of it.
You mentioned China. They probably gave us the gift of the century by banning mining and having mining move to the U.S. I think the stats now are U.S. is like 35% or so
and growing.
mining.
Yeah.
I think Texas is more than 10% alone.
Yeah.
I've heard rumors, backroom conversations over the last couple of months. Xi Jinping is maybe reconsidering, and somebody here who's in the mining business said that 15% of mining still happens in China.
I believe it. Yeah.
How do you think about a big country like that obviously was a leader, if they were to make an effort to come back?
If China made an effort to come back, that would have a very huge impact on network hash rate and therefore network difficulty. That was, in 2021, when the China mining ban officially happened, we were already in a downturn in the market. Miners were struggling, and that, I forgot what it was, but like 60% drop in network hash rate was a huge boom to all of us at that time. And for that to now come back, because there's a lot of power assets there. There's a lot of underutilized power assets there. And that's why mining does still exist in some way, because the temptation to use that, to monetize that power, the incentive is too high. So, people are doing that. If China really went all in, that would really be a tough competitor. That would drive down hash price for all of us and make the industry even more competitive than it already is. So I guess you can't have perfect worlds. I would love it if China adopt the strategic Bitcoin reserve, but just leave mining where it is maybe. Let's not make it any harder for us. The business is tough as it is.
A bunch of miners have met with the incoming administration, and it feels like they're very bullish on mining in general, on Bitcoin, et cetera. Anything that you took away from those conversations that are worth sharing?
I was very impressed with President Trump's understanding and reception to the industry. A lot of times I go into meetings, a big focus of mine in my role over 2024 has been meeting with lawmakers, meeting with policymakers to talk about Bitcoin mining, to advocate for Bitcoin and mining as well. And I go into these meetings always prepared to convince a skeptic. And there are two high-profile politicians where I did not have to do that. And that was with Governor Abbott. I was very impressed with how much he knew and how much supportive he was off the bat. And then with President Trump. I believe, understands the desire for an alternative option. Doesn't look at Bitcoin and the dollar as mutually exclusive things. I think he understands Bitcoin and cryptocurrency more broadly is an asset class that's important. It's here to stay. And if it's here to stay, then the United States should be the leader in it. I think he was also very interested in tying back to the first discussion point we had about how Bitcoin mining can drive more generation. I know he's very focused on getting enough energy infrastructure, energy generation to meet the demands of AI, HPC, all these data center applications that are coming out there. And then what we really wanted to communicate to him was how Bitcoin mining was a tool to help make that happen. So I believe the message was persuasive. I think we're in a very positive regulatory environment for Bitcoin, and I couldn't be more excited.
I have a bet with a friend that if the Bitcoin Strategic Reserve happens, he will tweet out, we have just acquired 10,000 big, beautiful Bitcoins mined in the USA, right? Or some version that will entertain us all.
Before we go here, because I know the time's counting down, I know everyone here has got a copy of How to Live an Extraordinary Life. So I would be remiss if I didn't ask you about that before we left here. Can you talk a little bit about how this book came about and why you think it's meaningful to the audience here?
It's weird to talk about this, to be honest. I started writing letters to my kids, and How to Live an Extraordinary Life sounds like I'm giving advice to people. Pretty much it's just 65 letters to my kids about things that I learned over the years. And my dad read it, and he said, "Oh, you were listening the whole time?" Right. So, but I think that Extraordinary Life is this unique thing where everyone has a version for them. My version is different than yours for somebody else. But the through line for everybody is just you have agency. Mm-hmm. And I think we live in a world where you're constantly told the world happens to you. You have no control, kind of sit in the box and eat the worms type stuff. But the people that I know that are happy and successful, they've all, made decisions in their life that have put them on a track to go after whatever that extraordinary life is. And so my goal was that my kids would learn that, and anyone who reads the book, I think so too.
I think it's a really good book. It's also a very easy read, the way you just structured it out.
I wrote it for somebody with ADD like me.
What really comes through, though, is you did write that for your kids. You know, you didn't set out to write a book. You were writing life advice that you genuinely wanted, you know, the people you love nothing more in the world, your kids, to understand. And it really comes through when you read the pages of that book. And you know, that's why I thought it was so impactful. This is not someone that's trying to, you know, sell a, you know, a self-improvement book. This is someone that is trying to help the people he loves the most.
If I was trying to make money on the book, I did a bad job. All right, guys, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.